And hello, welcome to the Y'all Show. I'm John Rawl, and it's great to have you back here as we start off another week. Hope everybody had a great Easter weekend. And we're going to go to Toccopola, US of A now to be joined by our Toccopola storyteller, Jerry Short. And Jerry Short, and I'm glad to have him on here on the program as I'm John Rawl. This is the program called Y'all, talking all things Southern. And we've got Jerry Short in Toccopola. And if you're lucky enough to be on our Facebook page or checking us out at y'all.com, you can actually see Jerry Short here on today's Y'all Show as we have our first Y'all TV correspondent in Toccopola, USA, Jerry Short. Hello, Jerry.
Hey man, I don't know if that's luck or not. It's might be unlucky if they see me, but we can go ahead.
Yeah, we're excited to see you. How's
What?
everything in Toccopola? Did y'all have a good Easter?
Uh, Pretty good Easter. If a storm didn't do any damage, it just missed us, I guess.
The storm? Is that what I
Yeah,
heard
we
you
was
say?
under storm watch all day Easter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was bad. I was a little bit worried there for a time or two. I was afraid I was gonna be another Easter storm. We had one in a town out where my grandmother lived one time. It hit Easter. Saturday afternoon before Easter and blew our house away and broke some ribs and goodness gracious, killed 7 people in Water Valley in 1984.
That was before the day before Easter or on Easter Sunday?
Saturday afternoon before Easter,
Okay.
I was cruising land down in almost to Jackson. It was sun shining and beautiful, and I got back home to Grenada, and I got the word that my grandmother's house was blown away, and she was bedded down at her sister's house with broken ribs. Hospital was about blown away, and 4 or 5 service stations, and Casey Jones's house he lived in Water Valley was blown away. And, oh, it was a disaster,
I
and
can
I
imagine.
never would have known it. And I got there, my wife said everybody that's come through, somebody's trying to get in touch with you because there's no phone service or anything, and it was unbelievable the damage it did. It was like I said, 7 people were killed.
7 people killed in that 1980s tornado,
84,
84, in Water
84.
Valley, Mississippi, just a few hollers away from Toccopola. Jerry,
Y'all,
I,
you can
we're
go ahead.
we're
I'm
glad to
ready.
connect to you here today on the Y'all Show. Of course, you and everybody else in your bunker as we're dealing with the coronavirus.
Ooh.
And I know you're like me. It's not easy being trapped inside most of the day. So how are you managing?
Oh, I'm telling you, boy, if I could drink alcohol, I'd make some moonshine corn liquor, I believe in, and see if I could drink a gallon. This might help me get through a day and a night and a day and a night. It might help me get through the rest of my life. So I think I'll just play it safe and drink some milk and a Coke or something.
If you've
Mm.
been listening to our show the last couple of weeks, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we told you that with the coronavirus outbreak, that people are starting to see thefts in stores and people are really starting to kind of be on the lookout for crime. Then the other week, you had a visit with us, Jerry, and you mentioned how your own son had a break in his truck in his own driveway. And in the
Right.
same town that he lived in, the local pawn shop had several guns stolen from it. Jerry,
That's
we've
right.
got an update to that story since we last spoke to you here on the
We
Y'all Show.
absolutely do. You want to give it, or you want me to?
No, you
I'll.
go ahead and get it. You're our insider.
Uh, yeah. Well, my son's got cameras on each corner of his home, and he saw them out there. They had umbrellas, and they would point them towards the cameras where you couldn't see their face. So once he got out there, they took off, and they went on down and was trying to rob someone else, but they caught 2 of them because they hid in the bushes. He called the law, and the police came in pretty quick. And so after they came in, uh, they caught the 2 or 3 that were juveniles. They carried them to jail, and my son was informed that they have this virus situation.
The
They were
coronavirus?
That's absolutely correct. And he cleaned his a vehicle out where they had ransacked it, and did all that kind of stuff, and it's really unbelievable. Uh, After he found out, and he works behind a desk at paper mill in Grenada, Mississippi, and he had to tell his superintendent of the situation. So they take his temperature when he goes in every day, and take it twice, and then they take it when he leaves, and he's got a form that he keeps a record of his temperature, and because they're concerned, and as a matter of fact, they've staggered the shifts for that whole plant down there. That people that would come, everybody would come at 7, they'd change shifts. Now they have half come at 6 and half come at 7, and half get off at 6 and half get off at 5, and it's just it's really crazy. So many people are affected by this that you don't realize it, but now he's got to worry, and that lady also has to worry that they ransacked her vehicle. She got in her vehicle and cleaned it out and did everything. Now he's got to worry that he could possibly, because he got in his vehicle shortly thereafter they were in it, and he could possibly have caught it that way. It's they say it's not airborne, but hey, it may not be airborne, but the particles out of a sneeze or a sweat, they're airborne. So, and now they're finding out it'll live a lot longer on metal than they thought it would. So, yeah, I'm concerned for him, and he's concerned, his family's concerned, and he's exposing his son and wife. So that's kind of how you stand in a situation like that.
Have you gone out in public, Jerry, and do you have a mask if you've gone out in public?
No, and most of the people I see, I'll go to 4 or 5 surrounding towns in a 30 or 40 mile radius to do my grocery shopping,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm confined also to my vehicle. So if anybody was to give it to me, it would be in my vehicle, except when I'm in a grocery store. My daughter has a urgent care clinic and a compound pharmacy, and I will go there. But now they've gotten to the point that you have to wait outside, and they'll bring you something just like you were going through a McDonald's drive-through
Really?
at this pharmacy. Absolutely. And that county down there doesn't have that many cases. I think they only have 3. As a matter of fact, I know Mississippi's had. I believe we're at about 79 deaths and 3,000 cases, a little over maybe 3,300 or something like that. That was as of Friday. I hadn't seen this week, so I didn't look today to see what it starts out this week. I'm sure this weekend it was added to it, this past weekend. Mm-hmm.
Scary times, and times that nobody in this part of the world's ever seen for sure.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk to you a little bit in the show about your past background, Jerry, of running a bread truck at one time, because bread and milk are two of the things that people are running around trying to find these days. So before we forget, I'm going to make sure you go back in the archives and talk about your glory days running a bread truck.
Yeah, and then I got some other glory days too besides that. But are you taking a break? Are you
I'm
ready?
going to take a break. Before I do that, though, Jerry, I've got to ask you, because I did talk to you midweek, and while we're talking about the virus, and it looks like our ratings here on the Y'all Show are pretty good, not quite as good as the White House press briefings. And I know you've
Oh,
got something to say about our commander in chief when it comes to these White House press briefings. So go ahead. Maybe the president's listening in and watching our show today. What do you have to say to Donald J. Trump?
well, I think it may be a little overkill. That's just my opinion, obviously. And if
Overkill
we
in what
if
way?
overkill in just every day for 30 minutes to 2 hours, it's repetitive, a lot of it.
They even
And
say it. If you ever watch that thing, they always say, well, we've already answered this 5 times.
no, and it's not his fault. The media, well, somewhat is because he's there. But I believe I would turn a lot of that over to my vice president, and he would handle a lot of that with my committee. And they've got all the answers, and President Trump's got answers and opinions. And sometimes those opinions gets to be just like the same word again, repetitive. And you hear it and you hear it, and how we're going to come back, and we're going to be bigger and stronger and better than ever before. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's never happened overnight any place I've ever worked or been associated with, or military I've been in, or if you fall back, you just don't make that ground up immediately
Hmm.
in anything. So
I know the
that's
president's
kind of
actually come out and said that he's trying to be a cheerleader for the country, and I think I've heard somebody, and if someone didn't come up with this, I'll come up with it. In some ways, we don't need a cheerleader; we just need a leader.
that's exactly all we need. And he's a good leader and a great leader, and probably the only human being alive in America that could stand up to the things he has to stand up to, and be as well versed and all around as he is as a president. I've never seen anything to equal it. But at the same time, it becomes kind of an overkill, and it's the same thing over and over and over and over, and it's every day. And I sure don't need the governor of New York lecturing to me every day. Uh, Excuse me while I
Have you
say.
actually seen the governor of New York, who we're talking about, Governor Cuomo there? Have you seen his brother on CNN who has a coronavirus fight going on for about 2 weeks now? We're talking about Chris Cuomo of CNN. Have you seen any of his reporting there on CNN?
Hold on a minute. I think my cameraman not messed up.
No, we're getting you fine and all good.
I tell you what, the situation with me and CNN is like zero. Uh,
It
so
it makes
that's
you, to quote Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, a phrase I'd never heard until this week. CNN and Jerry Short's kind of like, it makes you mad as a mama wasp. Is that right?
I've heard that before, and I heard him say that, and I think me and him may have. He may have a little Toccopola in him,
Yeah, he may
and
have that indeed.
but I like him. He tells it like it is, and he would be my kind of senator. And I think we need one like him in Mississippi today.
Well, a lot of states
And
meet a John. I mean, he is a perfect guy to go to for a quote about anything. He's got something to say, and usually
oh,
it's
he's he
usually it's
digs
pretty
in the
darn
heart
funny.
guy.
Our
He's
guy,
he's uh, he's like a Jerry Clyber with all the silliness.
yeah, but he's no Jerry
You know.
Short, our Toccopola storyteller.
Yeah.
We've got another segment. We're going to go over and talk a little bread talk with Jerry. Don't miss out on the fun and find out just how much money he made going around the highways of the South back in the 1960s with a bread truck. And maybe right now we need to give a little shout out to all of our current bread delivery people out, along with the milk people and the grocery people and everybody keeping that supply chain a going as we're trying to get through this unprecedented time. This is the Y'all Show. Our final segment of today's show is coming right back after this break. All right. Jerry, if you will slightly turn the camera a little bit more toward the town that you live in.
You saw Sonya kept putting stuff up.
Oh, did you? And tilt it more toward your
She was sending a
ceiling.
picture after a picture.
Wrong way.
Up toward his ceiling.
Right there. That's where you need to be.
I can't see myself.
We'll just try to keep it right there.
Okay.
All right, here we go. And the Y'all Show back now, final segment of the program all about the South. Our number to connect with us, 803-816-1170. We've got our Toccopola Storyteller joining us right now, Jerry Short, and we're trying to get through all of the pandemic. We're all trying to get through it, and Jerry has done his best in the previous segment to tell us about how he's getting through it. But one way that a lot of people have had to kind of have the hardship here, and we certainly don't want to discount people who have a real hardship, those that have either had the virus or have loved ones who've had it, and those who unfortunately have passed away from the COVID-19. But if you've gone to the grocery store, in addition to the toilet paper being gone and the disinfectant being gone, oftentimes bread and milk are AWOL from your local grocery store. So, Jerry Short, we're going to go back in the day. At one time, you delivered bread around the Southeast. And I want to know what that was like, and was it lucrative being a bread delivery guy?
Yes, it was lucrative. It pretty much was. Um,
And why
I
did you
think
quit doing it?
it was too doggone hard.
Really?
Yeah, it'd like to kill me. Um, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning until I never saw the town that I was living in, and I had a route through the Delta. It I got back home at night, and that was a 6 day a week job. So the only time I ever saw the daylight in the town that I lived in was on a Sunday,
Hmm.
and I'd go to sleep in the bathtub. But
Why?
when I got out of the military, uh, not the reserve component, when I got back from school, military school, a friend of mine had a bread route, and
Why did you
and
sleep in the bathtub before we move on from that?
I fell asleep in the bathtub
Oh, okay.
from from lack of sleep on that bread route. And I had 87 stops every day. And if you don't think that's a lot, and then you have to talk to the people, then you got to come back and freshen your bread up. And the bread's not all you sell. You sell donuts. I can tell you what they cost. We sold them for 8 cents. They sold them for 10. A pack of 3 donuts to a package.
What
A
bread company were
small
you
loaf of
working
bread
for?
was 18,
What
sir.
bread? Who were you working for?
This was Colonial, and Wonder offered me a job, which would have been a little bit more money. And I was real young. I was 21 or two, and I said, and I was just looking for something. I had a job offshore with Texaco. They were holding my job, but I thought, I'd just live around my mother and and just stay here because it didn't pay as much and it didn't have near the benefits. But I thought, well, no loss. The jobs weren't that hard to come by in those days. So, and then I was going to school a little bit too at the same time, a little bit. And so what he asked me, did I want the job, and that was a Saturday afternoon when he got off work. I was working Monday morning, and I had to drive from a town in north central Mississippi to the Delta.
Hmm.
And back in those days, John, they had little country stores along the way. I would get to them before they would open, even before the farmers even got in them.
Really?
I would leave bread behind the door. I would leave. It would be you brown them rolls, or just rolls to brown. It would be a big loaf, small loaf. Roman meal come out. That answers the question of Colonial, and that's who I was working for. And I would come back by that night, and their stores would be full that night, and that's when I would pick up my money. I would leave a ticket with them.
So you
The
would
one
go by a
place,
store early in the morning, and at your route would have you go back the same route to pick
yeah,
up.
I had to come back to the same town because the bread came from the bakery and was unloaded by trailer truck at this town.
Okay.
And all three of our routes left that same place in different directions. So mine went west to Greenwood to Itabena, all through the Delta, and I had grocery stores, I had service stations, and they didn't have near the type things then that they have today, as far as grocery stores. We had a couple of three big ones, Safeway and Sunflower was the name of one, and in Greenwood. But small, like I said, a small loaf of bread was 18 cents. They sold it for 20. You dealing in nickels and dimes, but everybody made it fine then. But for me, I'm gonna tell you, uh, Christmas came around, and we had these things. They used to have these punch boards that people would pick a number and they'd punch it to win the prize.
Mm-hmm.
The prize was a big fruit cake, and I had a lot of Chinese restaurants in the Delta.
Yeah.
Not restaurants, stores, the Chinese stores,
In the
and I had a
Mississippi
lot of
Delta,
those,
there's a large Chinese
a
population.
lot of them, and they would want 200, 300 fruit cakes to give away to their customers, and they were usually in black sections of town, and back in that day, uh, black, white, polka dots, you name it, it wasn't any crime. You could leave your door open on your bread truck. Little kids would come up and want to know if you had a souvenir or something to give them, or a little loaf of bread to give them, or anything. Because we used to give stuff like that away. And but it was a real hard job, and I had a real long route, and I would take my route book, and every now and then when I would see fit that I had a really bad store, that I maybe a service station that wouldn't take anything but a set of hamburger buns maybe, or a long loaf of bread, or a roll, and or a hot dog bun. And when I'd come back by it, if it wasn't sold that first day, that's when they first come out with that tie around the end of a bread. If you've ever noticed, they're different colors. They represent the day they need to come up the third day. Like a red one, they would put a red one
I didn't
out
know
on a
that. You're
Tuesday,
teaching
and
me
you'd pick it
stuff
up.
I've never known about, Jerry.
Yeah, you'd pick it up on a Friday because the red tie was on it, and that would signal that it was time to pick it up, and then it'd go to a bread store, and I'd turn it back in, and if I had losses, I had to pay for the losses,
Yourself.
and yeah, myself. So a lot of times I'd have losses, but I was really young, and right after I quit the doggone job, I started surveying for an engineer, and uh, about a week or two after I quit, the guy that took my place, we were going to survey a place in the area where the bread I delivered the bread. I saw that bread truck was upside down on the side of the road.
No
The
way.
guy had went to sleep and turned the bread truck over and scattered bread everywhere. But
Bread, but
as you
not
start,
brains. Hopefully the guy was
right.
okay.
But as you started out, it is a bread is a necessity, and it got down to where in the grocery stores here lately, they would put down one bread per customer
Mm-hmm.
because people were pounding it at first. They'd pick up 10 loaves if they could get out the door with them, just like they do toilet paper and stuff today. And and eggs became the same way in grocery stores, as anybody out there listening knows because they've been through the same situation. So I went through that situation considerably. But after about 9 months, they wanted me to wear a tie, and I thought it was a pretty labor intense job that I didn't need to wear a tie. So that's what finally
You,
got me.
you quit your
I
job because
refused.
you refused to wear a tie?
I refused to wear a tie, and Harold Enoch, the man who was in charge out of Jackson, Mississippi, he would meet me at a anybody out there in, as Jackie Gleason would say, out there in Radio Land. Anybody out there in Radio Land has ever eaten in Greenwood at the Crystal Club? I worked it early in the morning, and it's Greek. It's a Greek restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Jimmy liked me a lot, and they expected us to eat there, and this Harold Enos guy would be there. And when I would slip in the back, Mr. Jimmy the Greek, he would be back there making stuff for the day. He'd be rolling out bread, and he'd be making rolls and all kind of good stuff. And he would tell me, "Hey, your boss is up front. You're going to have to eat with me today." And that would slow me down another 30 minutes. I didn't have 30 minutes to spare. I ran constantly so I could get home by dark. But hats off to the second responders and first responders of the bread and the milk and those necessity items.
Something
That
tells me, Jerry, that not probably a lot has changed since the 1960s when you delivered bread and what they do today. It's an intensive job. I assume that people have to go out there that deliver bread, milk, and all the
well,
other groceries.
yeah, it is. But those rascals, they shortened their routes. I've talked to some of them, and not too long ago I talked to one, and but that's been years and years and years. But I had, like I said, I had 87 stops. They cut that back to about 50, and then they give them Wednesdays off. So it become a 5 day a week job, but you still had to work Saturdays,
Hmm.
and it knocked me out of my football games too. I didn't like
Oh
that.
man, I'm
Yes,
sorry about that.
I know it did, and but it's something that my hat goes off to all these guys that are doing that kind of work now, because you really have to work with some store owners and some managers of of some of these doggone big uh, these big grocery stores that can be a little bit tough and a little bit arrogant on you. Sometimes I had some things happen like that to me that we didn't have calculators then, and I had 100 items, and I had to add them all up by with a pencil and a paper. And I know I had one time said, "You want to keep your position on my bread rack? Wonder's got number one position. You got number two position. Uh, Hart's got number three position. Hardened bread's got number four. You want to be moved back to number four? I can't stand a mistake like this anymore." And it was an 8 cent mistake,
Gosh,
and it was, you know, and I did it
tough business.
in my vehicle, in my bread truck. And so anyway, it was fun. You got to know a lot of people, and I didn't know I was going to talk bread when I got on this thing.
Well, I'm not
I
letting you off till you answer the big question that I've got. It's a throwback to
all
my
right, let it.
childhood, and I guarantee a lot of folks across the South grew up as kids eating this thing that was a real delicacy when you could get your hands on it. And Jerry, I haven't seen this available for several decades. You
I'm
mentioned the
thinking
word
hard.
Roman meal.
Roman meal.
Does that
That's
still
right.
exist?
I hadn't seen it either, but it came out in '65, maybe, or
Okay.
six.
And that was a
And
colonial bread
it was
product?
colonial bread. They made that Roman meal bread. It was a 22-cent loaf of bread. It wasn't your long bread.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't your sandwich bread. It was your regular bread, but it had some wheat in it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a wheat bread.
Mm-hmm.
And it it was a real unique bread when it came out, and it went off the shelf pretty fast.
Oh,
It,
I would
it
eat it at my grandmother's house. She would buy it, and I would eat that by itself. And I really enjoyed it. I've also got to ask you this question. I'm not sure if they did this when you were a kid or when you were delivering bread, but
I was a kid doing that.
I think it was colonial bread in the 1970s that helped come up with one of my hobbies. They would package in their bread about once a year little stickers of flags, and they were
Yeah,
American historic flags from the Revolutionary War, the war between the states, and more. And kids like me would collect those little flag stickers that they would stick in a loaf of bread. Was that colonial?
Colonial did that later
Okay.
after I was gone,
Okay.
but I remember. I was bad about Wonder Bread was my favorite bread because all the old Ozzie and Harriet shows and honeymooners and old westerns and all, they advertised Wonder Bread, build
Uh,
bodies in 9 ways. And so I guess it sold me through commercials. I
hmm.
was a Wonder Bread eater, but I was selling colonial bread. It couldn't taste much difference at all in it. But the Wonder Bread was, they had a bakery in Clarksdale, and they was going to hire me out of Greenwood to work at that one, and
I'm
not
sorry
at the
sorry it
bakery.
didn't work out for you.
Well, I tell you, I would have probably collapsed. You can say, a lot of. I've done a lot of things in the army, and I probably had 15 different dang type jobs in the army, and the hardest one has been mess sergeant or first cook. So you never know who's working the hardest out there till you've tried them all. And so I would rather I'd rather plow a mule as deliver bread from 4 in the morning till about that same time at night. I'm gonna tell you, but and the same thing goes for the military. I'd rather jump out of a C-141 at 110 miles an hour at 2,000 feet as do some of this cooking in a mess hall again from 4 in the morning. I don't think I'm a 4 or 5 o'clock in the
Okay.
morning type guy.
Well, we will let you slide. Thank you for getting up early during that time that you deliver bread. And we thank all of our bread delivery people, our milk people, the farmers that are making it, and the dairy people involved in that industry, and of course our grocery store workers, our fast food workers. We just want to thank all of our hard workers that are helping get us through this unusual and unbelievable time that we're going through right now. Jerry, best to
Yes,
you.
sir.
We'll talk to you next week right here on the Y'all Show.
Oh, we're gonna have something good.
We're going to have good. That's what we do. And if you don't mind, go out and get me some bread while you have a chance.
Let's see. I've got some right in front of me.
Find me some Roman meal.
I'll look.
All
If I
right.
can't, I'll find the recipe.
Jerry
How's that?
Short, everybody. Well, that will wrap up our show here on the program. Make sure you tune in on Tuesday. We're going to have barbecue talk and a whole lot more. It's the Y'all Show. Thank you for listening and for watching.